Fatigue is a really common problem after a burn injury, and many people find that it can get better over time. Fatigue can be a direct result of the burn injury itself. For example, sometimes the body needs more oxygen or more energy to recover, but there are other factors following a burn that can also contribute to fatigue. For example, experiencing pain, skin tightness, itching, all of these things can lead to tiredness and lack of motivation. This video will focus on techniques that may help with fatigue. Most people will find that it will get better over time and that they do go back to their the same level of energy pre-burn, although it might take time. But about a quarter of people who've experienced a burn will experience fatigue 1 year post-burn injury, and some people never regain the same energy levels that they had. All of the things that we recommend are much easier said than done, and we often get into habits which we're all guilty of, but just putting in a few of these recommendations might make a really big difference. What triggers fatigue can be different for everybody, and knowing what activities are more tiring for you can help you then pace yourself and help you manage your energy levels. If you're unsure what activities you find tiring, you might want to consider monitoring your fatigue by rating your tiredness before an activity and after an activity, and then you can space out the activities that are particularly draining for you throughout your week and allow for plenty of breaks. We do recommend taking short breaks regularly rather than having one long break once fatigue hits you. And prioritising where you use your energy, so planning what you need to do that day and what can maybe wait for another day can also be helpful. Also, prioritising time for physical rest is important, but also making time for activities to help you mentally rest is just as important. Fatigue may affect our thoughts. So, for example, you might have thoughts like, I shouldn't feel like this, I should be able to just get on with things, or I'm useless. And this can have a huge impact then on people's mood or how we feel. So we might feel frustrated or sad or irritated. And this can then affect what we do. So we might do things like avoid activities altogether, or putting in all of our energy rather than pacing, which can lead to feeling really burnt out. And this can then impact our mood, but then feeling low in mood, stressed, anxious, can leave us feeling tired. So it can become a bit of a horrible cycle. If you are struggling with your mood because of your burn injury, please do contact the burn psychology service for professional support. You could also acknowledge your feelings. So if you're feeling frustrated or sad or guilt, talking about it with someone you trust can be helpful. Your feelings are important and are valid, and often we find that when we keep our feelings trapped in, it can have a huge physical effect on the body and make people even more tired. So talking is important. You could also plan time in your schedule to do activities that you enjoy, that make you feel good and happy, and maybe some activities that give you a sense of achievement as well. Remembering that motivation usually comes after we start an activity, not before. It's how motivation works in our brains, which often surprises people. So giving yourself something like a 5-minute rule where you start an activity and do that for 5 minutes and then make a decision as to whether to stop or continue that activity, as you're far more likely to feel motivated to do something 5 minutes into a task. finally, ensuring that you notice when you've done an activity well, and to celebrate your achievements is really important. Generally being kind to yourself. Sometimes thinking about what you'd say to a friend that was having similar experiences to yourself can be helpful. It may seem obvious, but sleep is also really important. A term used for managing sleep is sleep hygiene. It's nothing to do with your personal hygiene. It's simply about helping the body to prepare for sleep. You could try establishing a regular routine by going to bed at the same time each day and then getting up at the same time every day. And you could also develop a routine for before you go to bed to help you wind down. So doing things like having a hot chocolate, completing a relaxation exercise, listening to some gentle music are all things that can help us wind down. Having a hot bath or a hot shower before bed can also be helpful, particularly because it allows the body to sort of heat up and then cool down, which can help us feel very sleepy. You should also try to avoid eating heavy meals late in the evening where possible, and also reducing the intake of things like caffeine, alcohol, nicotine in the hours before you go to bed can make a really big difference. It's not recommended to be looking at any bright lights whilst in bed, so this does include watching the telly or browsing on your phone in bed. And instead, if you can try and get regular exposure to the outdoors or bright lights during the day, this can help our circadian rhythm and routine and help us sleep. You could also try to create a calm environment to sleep in, preferably one that's cool and dark and quiet. Sometimes earplugs, blackout blinds, or maybe even an eye mask. So it's recommended to use your bedroom for sleeping only where possible. So, not eating in bed, for example, and doing that type of thing, just using your bedroom for sleeping. And some things to try not to do are excessive exercise within around 3 hours of going to bed, and taking a nap after about 4 p.m. during the day, as these can affect your sleep patterns. Sleeping difficulties can be due to other factors associated with a burn injury, for example, trauma, anxiety, pain. And if you find yourself struggling with sleep for those underlying reasons related to your burn injury, please do ask to be referred to the burn psychology service for more specialist input on these things. This guidance is for fatigue after a burn injury, but for some people their burn injury won't be their only condition or injury. So if you have guidance from your consultant or your treating team about things like exercise or sleep or anything discussed in this video, please keep your treating team's advice in mind and consult them if you are unsure about anything. When we talk about a burn injury, it's important to recognise that people's exercise levels before a burn injury will really vary. So when we're talking about exercise, we're talking about getting the exercise levels back to what it was pre-burn injury. It's worth remembering that what people can do will depend on their stage of recovery as well. If you are an inpatient or you're still coming to clinic for dressings, for example, this may be very different compared to if you're, say, 2 years down the line. A common belief is that exercise will make fatigue worse, but actually this usually isn't the case. Exercise can really help with fatigue. It might not feel like it at the time, but over a long period of time, it can really help boost energy levels. Exercise is great for both our physical health and also our mental health, and it can also help us sleep more deeply. With exercise, it's often helpful to choose something which you really enjoy, as you're more likely to stick to it. You could also try some simple things like parking the car a bit further away from a workplace or the other side of a supermarket, or getting off the bus, a stop before your destination, or taking the stairs rather than a lift. There are some types of food that can make us feel more sluggish and lacking of energy, whilst others can help us maintain our energy levels for longer periods. So for example, fast releasing carbohydrates, so these are things like sweets, sugary cereals, white bread, sugary drinks. They break down very quickly and flood our body with a lot of sugar. And this can give us an increase in energy in the short term, but it usually is followed by a decrease in energy. Whereas slow releasing carbohydrates, so things like brown rice, whole grain pasta, fruit, vegetables, these are more complex in how they work and contain fibre that helps us slow down the release of sugar, and this helps us maintain our energy levels. So it's important for our diets to have a balance of the more complex carbohydrates and protein from our foods. Drinking enough fluid, particularly water, keeps the brain and body hydrated, and in turn can really help our energy levels. I think keeping in mind that drinking lots of caffeine, so things like tea, coffee, some fizzy drinks, especially energy drinks, may increase your alertness initially, but this is often very short-lived. Fatigue can lead to difficulty with attention and concentration. So some cognitive strategies that might be useful are things like using checklists to help you stay on track, things like Google Calendar or just a paper and pen diary, using alarms to prompt you to stay on task or to prompt you to take a break, and these can be set on fitness trackers and smartwatches. Or if technology isn't your thing, using written prompts, post-it notes as reminders, rather than trying to hold everything in mind, which can be very mentally draining. You could also think about turning off distractions, for example, the TV or music when you're trying to concentrate on a task, or doing one thing at a time can really help with concentration. Thank you for watching this video. We hope that there's been a few useful tips for you. If you continue to struggle with fatigue relating to your burn injury and this is causing you distress, please contact the burn psychology team, or alternatively your GP or a sleep clinic. Equally, if you're struggling with any other psychological issue relating to your burn injury, please do contact the burn psychology team. Thank you.